Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I'm here with a good friend of mine and a Connecting Consciousness Northeast and Worldwide coordinator, Ian McHale. Give yourself a round of applause, Ian. Welcome to the show. Yeah, so Ian's written three, I think you're writing your fourth book now, aren't you? Is that correct? Or
It's fourth work in progress. Three are already done, and yes, the fourth's in work in progress. Thanks.
Yeah, his three books and a bit regarding spiritual awakening in a non-fiction setting that parallels to the real world, but not quite in the real world, I suppose. Well, we say that now, it is kind of it is the real world, really, because everything kind of sits as an overlay and a layer bit by bit, and you're bringing your characters into having these interactions with these other layers of reality. So yeah, do you want to start off with a bit of that?
Yes, there. Thank you for that, and hello to everyone. Um, they are aimed at folk who are on the approaching, or they're on the cusp of, or they've even taken their first few steps into realizing that the world around them is very different to what so far they'd just taken as normal, as you said, like as no reality, and then it suddenly shudders and perhaps even starts to fragment.
Mm.
But it's not preaching or proselytizing or saying you must think this. I don't do that. There are plenty of other folk in the world doing that. This we enter the whole milieu through the eyes and the experiences of two 20-something couples, um, who and the first book introduces them and the what's happening to them, and then some of the individuals that they come into contact with, and without giving a spoiler, that they're obviously not from this not from this surface world.
Mm.
And then the second book goes even deeper. So does the third one and the fourth one. That's that's work. They're not formulaically planned out. I tend to, as with most of my writing, it tends to be like a stream of consciousness. It just comes through, and my fingers have to catch up tapping on the keyboard.
Mm.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. It's really interesting with that topic about cracking down into the deeper layers of the reality at the moment, because there's so much bubbling up underneath the surface coming to be seen that it's really quite hard to miss. I find at the moment it's so in your face now that there's nothing, you're kind of being pushed up against a wall other than pushed up against a wall to be able to observe.
Yes, 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 and I often think it's active observing as well, because the what we're observing we need to be processing, and then
Hmm.
and the conversations we've had recently, have, that's what we've been focusing on, really, isn't it? The necessary inner work that comes into being
Yeah.
presented with this information, and then it's all, as you say, it's all bubbling around, not only externally, but also it's being reflected internally. And
Yeah.
um, it does need to be acknowledged, honored, and worked on.
Hmm. 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 Yeah.
It,
Mhm.
and in fact, I I know I read out to you the other day a draft of which is at the beginning of the article I've written for this week's newsletter. If I read it out again, I've added a couple of paragraphs.
Yeah, go for it.
But I and just before I do, obviously, I'm a storyteller. I like to tell stories, but I use stories to put information over, so it's often in a more palatable form.
Mm.
Anyway,
Mm.
I hope your audience appreciates, enjoys, and I'm jumping in. So there are ancient traditions, some going back to the times of the venerated Athena, also known as Pallas, an ancient Greek goddess, amongst whose many attributes were those associated with wisdom and the handicrafts of weaving and threading to create engaging and narratively tapestried imagery that was not just decorative, but also told educative and pertinent stories. Stories are so important to us, perhaps them even being, along with parables, although they were, or are, really just very short, but nonetheless very powerful stories, of which there are still many still highly relevant to us today that were originally spoken by a chap who was apparently wandering around the Middle East for a while, just over a couple of thousand years or so ago, and many of them were later selectively compiled in a certain book that no doubt you will be well aware of. Anyway, I posit that stories, and we all, each and every one of us, have lots of them, and we frequently engage in telling them in one way or another, and they are the primary way, the spiritual tool that is used to enable the offering of multi-layered insights about things. Thus do stories help us in so many ways, but particularly to help us become ever more aware of and understand not just things, i.e., the materially tangible, or all that which is currently perceived by us to exist only in the realms of the non-tangible, but ourselves as well. And by that I mean our true selves, by remembering who and what we really are, and what individually and collectively we are really and truly capable of achieving, as we are all, each and every one of us, immensely powerful creator beings. My humble attempts to help in the facilitation of all that happening are driven by the motivation and intention of all that creative weaving and threading I do with the medium of words, resulting in the storytelling tapestries, then offering, as with all the musings and the books I write, below the surface glimpses, as well as much longer lasting dives that go into varying depths of a variety of spiritually insightful subjects and their non-compartmentalized, interconnected themes. Because there is a point or a ledge, it's like a no ledge, knowledge, that we inevitably reach during the upward journey of our own spiritual evolution that we are all on.
Mm.
And when we are ready to, we come to an epiphany-like awareness, a realization that everything is connected. And of course, we ourselves are part and parcel of all that cosmic in scale and beyond interconnectedness of consciousness, i.e., the currently invisible to us noumena, which has a direct causal relationship to the manifestation of the material phenomena that is visible to us. A quick example of that, without digressing too much, is that here in the third dimension, the small organ we have at the back of our brains that's connected to the optic nerve through the lens of the eyes is able to decode the frequencies of visible to us light into around 70 or so different colors, hues, shades, and tones. In the fourth dimension, a realm of higher frequencies, it is in the region of double that, and in the fifth, even more, and so on.
Mm.
Last paragraph. those non-compartmentalized, in interconnected themes I mentioned, and we'll look at them here through the lens and perspective of multi-layered storytelling, will hopefully prove to be interesting, entertaining, thought-provoking, spiritually nourishing, bringing an awareness of and then the gradual implementation of our individual sovereignty, coming from the igniting of an intrinsic motivation that encourages doing one's own further research. And last, but by certainly no means least, because this is really the intricately woven, hanging down, tapestried narrative backdrop that actually also supports the vast stage upon which all the many and various themes and subjects perform and interact. And it portrays the crucial importance of doing the spiritual inner work.
Mm, love it.
Right. That's probably quite enough for me.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, that's amazing. That's so good. I really enjoyed that. Thank you. Um, yeah, this whole topic of bypassing has been quite hot on the list at the moment, I think. Um, Particularly and bypassing, surrendering, and heart-centered living, they seem to work in a kind of triangulation. And to get to the heart center is to surrender, and you have to surrender into the awareness of what it is that you're bypassing. And obviously, I just released my energy report this morning, and I've kind of gone into the details of not the nitty gritty details, but what's gone on with my mom recently, and my whole world has kind of gone upside down. Um, and following from our conversation leading up to this point, it's been very much a correction of the psychology of bypassing, of the energy of bypassing, in order to kind of really face truth. And it's interesting with the solar alchemy of Leo, it is essentially about seeing the truth to your reality. And this acts as a conversion point to the most restricted stuff that one does not want to see, does not want to admit, doesn't want to kind of get into because it's painful, because it's uncomfortable, because it's difficult. But it's a choice point to freedom. It's a choice point to sovereignty and liberation, I would say. Um, yeah. And I find that the surrendering is the key to allow all of this to change.
Yeah,
And this
yeah,
also runs in tandem with the rest of the world as well, I think. It feels very much at a crucial point of putting down the gauntlets and putting down the weapons to be able to find a common ground and a sense of peace. Um, yeah, that came about really strongly yesterday. I was in Stratford upon Avon and on the Albion Ley line in William Shakespeare's church, where he was buried. And this all of this imagery started to flood in regarding this, and it felt like a kind of a nexus point to witness all of the chaos as to what's gone on that's led to this point of solution, resolution, and heart-centered being, which will ultimately create oneness throughout the fields. And this is the whole, this is why we're here, this is why we've come here. But if we are unable to look, unable to see what it is that we're actually looking for or where it is that we're going to, how can we get there? Right. And it always starts with you, the individual, to
indeed,
yeah, to
indeed.
isolate that.
You know, with the Zoom meetings we have during the week with the community, they all start off with what I call an in-escape setting,
Mm,
brief meditation, and then putting in a protection, psychic protections and spiritual protections. And one of the lines I use is when doing, having done doing, whilst doing, not having done, but during the deep breathing, you're going into that inner place that is of silence and
mm,
stillness. Because it's so important. How often do we get, or not so much get as in gifted or given it? How often do we create our own experiences during the day of stillness and quietness
mm,
and or a silence? Not so much a silence that you can't hear anything, but just a a lack of external stimuli, shall we say, that
mm,
is constantly being bombarded with. Because as you were saying, just picking up on lots of the themes that you were saying there, there's so much externalities constantly coming, and they need curating, don't they? To say, right now, this is I like the word, as I'm sure lots of folk do, me time. I'm going to have some me time now. I'm going to invest it in me. Um, and that I like going into that sort of hypnagogic state of between slumber and awakening. Is a deep meditative state.
mm,
Uh, Afternoons are nice. It becomes a routine, and to come out refreshed. Yeah, 20 minutes, half an hour.
mm.
But ultimately, it's all under this heading of inner work. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I really love the point about the silence there, finding the silence. And sometimes for many people, including myself at the best of times, it feels like it's next to impossible to find that silence and the stillness. And if there's anything I've kind of learnt over the past, well, 6 years, but then really over the past 2 weeks, this was like massive, massive, massive transformation, is the ability to surrender and just to observe whatever's going on around you, within you, and without you. Um, that's the kind of key to get into the silence because you're coming to a place of um, conflict resolution and more on the resolution side to the conflict within.
Mm.
Um, if we are within a spiritual war, we're in a battle within ourselves with various varying consciousness that's trying to hijack or overtake or derail and destabilize. You have to go into that real thick grimy crap to seed the concept of, is there another way? What would happen if we thought about this? Do I have to feel so miserable? Do I have to be hurt or be in pain? It's effectively accessing yourself within the hell realms, within the kind of lower realms, and planting a choice, planting an awareness that you feel within yourself and feel within the despair that's within these layers, to bring it up as, do we really need to be in such conflict? And that then starts to elevate and raise into the higher realms, which is the end point, or it's the singularity of global oneness, interpersonal oneness, and universal, omniversal, multiversal oneness with the source field. This is what ultimately we want, is through every plane of existence, be it our universe or another, we just want to be able to get along.
Yes. Yeah.
It always
Yeah.
comes back to, can you get along with yourself and be at peace with yourself? I think.
And that piece can be experienced practically by, again, just repeating, going into that silence.
Hmm.
Because when you're in that silence, it tends also to mute to a certain extent one's the egoic voice, and it allows that little voice that we all have, but often don't listen perhaps to as often as we should, called discernment and intuition.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's it's fascinating in
Mm.
one sense that when we're born or in our early years, that little voice is loud.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Our discernment and intuition, when our age is in single digits, is. But as time goes by, the ego gets louder and it gets turned around, isn't it? And
Mhm.
all
Absolutely.
sorts of influences and programmings come to into work. And
Yeah.
again, I talk about a spiritual tool bag, and having a tool bag implies that really that that there are things in there that you use, and the more you use them, the greater your skills get at
Mhm. Mhm.
doing maintenance, repairing,
Mm.
creating something. If in a as a spiritual in a spiritual analogy,
Mm.
um, it's yes, our discernment and intuition, and classing that as one voice. Yeah, a bit more time and attention given to that, just listening to it.
Yeah.
It's and an interesting exercise to do is when you do have a decision to make, a choice, some form of change has come into your life, and the uh, as Heraclitus said, the only constant there is in life is change,
Mm.
and often change we can't do anything do anything about. It's way out of our control. But what we are in control of is how we react to it, and often it's that little voice inside. When that happens, just think, "Oh, I've got a little voice there. What's it saying?" And whatever it, just do it. Just do it. Just try it a few times. So
Mhm.
it's usually
Yeah.
right.
Exactly that. Yeah. And I have been finding as well, um, when you went back to the ego kind of taking over, just starting to isolate the kind of reptilian characteristics within the ego mind that's service to self. You know, when you're able to kind of sit there and see the perspective of the reptilian, what does it do? What does it understand? How does it operate? You then see your own anecdotes and how you function or one functions, um, in order for it to come to the surface and be loved. And I think this is it, because this consciousness has been so disconnected from source, disconnected from mother, because they see the mother as a breeding tool, women as breeding tools, rather than actual equality, people, beings of love and light. You know, there is one is above the other with them. And it's about kind of pulling the awareness of that back to start opening scope with all people, all beings, dogs, cats, rabbits, every animal, every plant, in order to kind of start to cohabitate or cohabit, whatever the word is, with one another. So then we all start to work together as this whole organism, the way it was meant to be. And this, I think, is going back to the bypassing and the deep inner work. When we kind of pull up these attributes, we're then also not only transforming our own DNA, from a ruby sun to diamond sun genetics, but it's also changing the template of the race mind as well. It's, yeah, it's something that's been kind of propping up and pulling at my feet recently, is just to kind of really understand it. Um,
Mm.
and I think with the bypassing concept, they love nothing more than that because then they don't need to take consequence for action
Yeah.
or for
Yeah.
thought, for deed, you know. So it really comes into a place of spiritual maturity in order to kind of understand how it works, why it works this way, what are the outcomes, what are the results of this kind of behavior within oneself and then on a planetary level. And we can see the results of that. We can see the results of power struggles. We can see the results of greed, um, and ultimately kind of attempted planetary takeovers.
Yes, indeed, indeed. It's
Yeah.
and that, yeah, quite right. I agree. The
Mm.
a crucial aspect of the inner work is
Mm.
asking the questions. We ask questions to get answers. It's
Mm.
what we do with the information we receive is another matter.
Mhm.
But yeah, one of the tools out of that spiritual tool bag is asking questions, and one of them is, what are the originators, or where did these feelings of disempowerment and limitation, fear come from?
Mhm.
So you've got you know it is, and it does take effort. It does take effort. It's there's no one size fits all way of going about things. We're all different.
Yeah.
But formulating the right questions for yourself,
Mm.
for that little inner voice that we're trying to listen to more now.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
definitely. Mm. Yeah, 100%. And just checking in and seeing where this louder voice tries to throw you off track. It's always a kind of fun game to play, but also quite uh, frustrating at the best of times. Yeah.
it's and so what's the end result of doing? Oh, I've done all the any work. I've been doing it for da, 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 da. Well, there is no destination, is there? We also come to a point, as I mentioned at the beginning. We come. I mentioned at the beginning, there comes a point that's epiphany, epiphanic point where we realize, and I've seen it. I've been privileged over 40 years ago to have that revealed to me and experience that we are all
Mm.
connected to everything. Then there's another one as well that is just as poignant, is that you also get to a point where you realize there is no destination.
Mm.
It's just the journey that
Mm.
we're on. And whilst we're on that journey, I think it was the Buddha who said, if you light a lamp for someone,
Mm.
it'll also brighten your path.
Mhm.
I think that's beautiful. I think that
Yeah,
sums
absolutely.
up, because you can't light lamps for people unless you've you've been doing the work
Mhm.
to light your own lamp. Yeah,
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 absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Very happy with that. Sounds good. Well, um, okay then. I don't think I've got any other information coming in at the moment relating to that. It feels like a
yeah, yeah,
conclusion.
yeah. I think we did what we intended. Have a brief chat on a Sunday morning. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
thank you very much, Felix. That's great.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for watching. Bye.
Bye bye.